Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Welcome to Our Town, the show about Rochester. I'm Danielle Teal. Today, I'm joined by co-host Nicole Nfonoyim-Hara as we continue the Rochester City Council candidate discussions with Ward 5 candidates. So stick around, you won't want to miss it.
Ward 5 spans the northeastern area of Rochester. The City Council seat for Ward 5 is currently held by Shaun Palmer. We're joined today by Ward 5 City Council candidates Saida Omar and incumbent Shaun Palmer. Welcome to Our Town, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll start with you, Saida. Would you please share a little bit about yourself and what are some of the top issues that you've been hearing on the mind of the ward's residents?
I moved to Rochester 12 years ago. When I came to this town, first I came from Dubai. I used to work there as a sleep technologist. And my father, who got a stroke, said, Mayo Clinic is the place I want to be. So my family, they moved here to Rochester, so I had to quit my job and come here in Rochester. Once I came, we noticed a lot of difference between the transportation and stuff like that. And that's why we went into a transportation, non-emergency transportation company. And our company is called Remjoy Special Transportation, and I'm the CEO and owner. We started out from scratch with nothing in the bank, and it grew. I mean, the town needed that transportation, especially when it was coming to diverse and all of that. I live in Lower Town in Rochester, and I like the community in Lower Town, how they started out to step up, in that area. They have those signs and everything, and that's one of the things that made me come up and say, I want to serve my community. So one of the three things that I want to focus on are, the first one is homelessness. The second one is rec and recreation that we don't have in Rochester. We used to have the Y, but it's not here anymore. And the third one is the affordable housing. Those are the three things that I want to focus on.
Well, thank you so much, Saida. And you, Shaun, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what are you hearing from the ward's residents?
I'll start out with Lower Town, and Lower Town is the Goose Egg Park neighborhood, and it's probably one of the best neighborhood associations that we have. And they've been together for over about 25 years, and it's a nice when we have these neighborhood associations that are working together. A lot of times it's on an issue. Slattery Park was on crime, Kuski Park was because of crime, but it's driven by a lot of the people. I am Shaun Palmer. I am the council person. I was elected in 2018. I was born and raised in Rochester at St. Mary's Hospital and went to RCC at the time, and then I went down to South Florida for a couple years as a union carpenter. Came back and graduated from Winona State with a degree in industrial construction. I then became a building inspector in Illinois, came back to Rochester, was a building inspector for 25 and a half years and retired. I have 3 kids. They're all angels and great kids. And so it's been a great experience to come back to your hometown. I came back in '89 when there were 5 cranes in the air. Some of the things that you hear when you're out knocking on doors and talking to people is how do we get people involved in government? How do we get their opinions known? There's a small group of very vocal people who, and sometimes you just need to discount that. Go to the average person and talk to them and see what their opinion is. It's not all about me. Part of my job is to communicate the ideas from the public to the city administrator. And then the other side is why do we do things? And that confuses some people of why did you do this? Why did we put in a snow emergency ordinance? And how did we go about and change it just a little bit to make it more friendly for people? And so that's kind of what I say is my job. I'd like to see us be better in the next 4 years at getting more community involvement. Some of the ones that we've done well at was Elton Hills Drive. We did well at that. We did well at Soldiers Field Golf Course. We've done well with that. In North Broadway, it was a big project for Rochester, the biggest project that Public Works has done since flood control. And we really did a lot of good community involvement with that.
Thank you, Shaun. We'll start with you with this question. Recently, the DMC Economic Development Agency EDA 2023 work plan and budget was approved and will be presented to the Rochester City Council. What are your thoughts about the work plan and budget?
The DMC is one of those things that not everybody understands. They do an okay job of marketing, but it really is dollars that are coming from the state of Minnesota that we use it as a forest tool. We have the Mayo Clinic, we have the Olmsted County, we have the state, and we have the city involved with it. So I do agree with the work plan. We voted for it, and it sets a goal for us. It's it's Second Avenue that we're going to be doing Discovery Walk, and that'll add things to Rochester. They're also going to take our master plan from Soldiers Field and help fund that. And that'll open up some other dollars from the referendum that I think were very important. I think people need to remember that this is about the patient experience. This is about how do we recruit new talent to come to Rochester, and that's what DMC is set up to do. And it's a partnership, and I think it's important to remember that it is. It's easy to knock it, but it's done a lot of good things. It brings a lot of good money to Rochester, and who wants to pay for sewers? You don't see that. Discovery Walk, 80% of it is below ground, and you don't think of those things.
Awesome. Thank you, Shaun. Saida, your thoughts around the DMC work plan?
DMC is doing a lot of things for the city, and one of the things I look forward to it is the education background that they're giving the community, and that technical buildings that's coming up that says that medical will meet the technology. That's the part of it I look forward to it, and I'm sure that a lot of kids that's coming out of colleges will have at least stable jobs through there, whether it's through mentorship or educational otherwise. The other things that I look through the DMC is the projects they have and they're planning that they're going to have in a few years, that the affordable housing and stuff like that, they have plans for it. So I look forward to all of that from them.
Thank you so much. And we'll be talking about affordable housing in just a moment, too.
Yes.
Thank you, Saida. So you're a CEO of a transportation company, so this next question is about transportation. What is your specific vision for transportation improvements and accessibility in the city?
Rochester, when I came 12 years ago, it was like 10 minutes drive everywhere. And now we're getting rush hours, like Washington, D.C., or it's not as big, but we're getting there. And we have to make sure that everybody have accessibility to go into downtown or Mayo Clinic or anywhere they want to, whether it's a bus or a railroad, and we need those. And the other thing I've been hearing about it, buses will be free in Rochester, and it shouldn't be, because everybody should have accessibility to paying themselves, and if not, the county is giving them. Where I came from, other countries like Dubai or Washington, D.C., everybody has their way to getting buses or anything like that, but they will get a token from the government for that person who cannot afford to pay for themselves. So I look forward to it, what's coming for Rochester, and I think it's a great things that's coming up, and the city is growing very, very fast. Yeah.
Thank you, Saida. And Shaun, what are your specific vision, if you have one, of transportation improvements and accessibility in the city?
Well, we're kind of excited because we're going to have the rapid bus transportation system coming, and we're at federal grant level at that right now. And basically that is the west lot for Country Club Manor for the Mayo Clinic. And then it's heading into town and making a loop, and it should be every 10 minutes. It'll run, I believe, until 11 o'clock at night. And about 90% of the people, 95% of the people using it are going to be Mayo Clinic employees. And so the Mayo Clinic has stepped up and said that in our agreement that they'll pay for that. And one of the reasons you want to have a free bus service is that it takes away that dollar amount to have to take the time to take a ticket or buy something on it. You can get on, you can get off. We went to Indianapolis and looked at their rapid bus system because both the mayor and I were more for a track, more for a railroad, and it adds a lot of money to it. But the rapid bus, when you get off and you get right off of that stop, you can, same level, you don't have to take a step, you get on, you get off. It makes it very efficient for people. The other things that we're doing with our affordable transportation is that we've added bike lanes, which some people are not fans of, but other people are. It just gives you one more option to come into town. Walkability is a big issue for Rochester, and we've done a better job of walkability. If you downtown, you'll see our stoplights will have the walkers start first, and then the traffic moves. Down at North Broadway, we have our cycle track, and there's some signs in it, no turns on red. So we're adding some of those things to Rochester. One of the disadvantages from COVID is that we don't have the community buses coming from the outside communities. And somehow that needs to get back into the line because we just can't have enough cars coming into Rochester. We don't have enough roads.
Yep, thank you both.
All right, Shaun, inflation has really taken a toll on families and individuals in the community. The City Council has recently had a number of split votes affecting affordable housing. Several projects have received the support of professional staff and Planning Commission, but face the opposition of some neighbors. In these situations, would you vote to support a project providing more affordable housing?
Well, and it's not just affordable housing. You're talking workforce housing, and I think people are confused that about 30% of someone's wages are going to go to housing, and it's a county and state, and it's a competitive market to do that. So in our ward, in the 5th Ward, we had one project at the new Quick Trip that I supported, and I thought was a good project. There's one behind the old Quick Trip that I didn't support for a couple of reasons, and one of them is there's no bus service there. And so on the weekends, you would end up with no ability to get anywhere on that. Also, in that neighborhood, you're going to have a 40-foot tall building that's overlooking some townhouses. So it's not as easy to say I'm for affordable housing or I'm for workforce housing. But the Maxfield study clearly states that we need housing of all types. We need single family, we need apartments, we need senior housing. And so that's kind of the hard part for us to how do we get that. You know, you go back to the 2008 recession, and it just devastated the housing market, the construction industry. Our 10-year average at that time was 500 houses a year. We're at 180, and we haven't caught up. And so supply and demand, our cost now for the city of Rochester to build a house, for a person to own a home, compared to the cities, it was a 41% price difference before. We're now at 12%. And so people are going to work at the Mayo Clinic and maybe live in the cities, where before at 41% you go, well, geez, we're going to live in Rochester and keep that talent, keep that payroll here. So it's not just talking about workforce housing, but it's a whole basket of things that we need to be doing differently.
Interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Shaun. Saida, what are your thoughts about affordable housing? You know, the thoughts from neighbors about having those accessible and as Shaun mentioned, you know, what's available as far as single-family homes and so forth.
Yeah, affordable housing is, I mean, a person who gets a paycheck and half of the paycheck goes to the mortgage, you know, it's very, very difficult. And when they don't have a down payment, that's another thing. That the government will only give 20% of the down payment, and that down payment sometimes is not enough to go through. And with the help with the government and all of that, I know that affordable housing is huge in Rochester, and it needs to be changed. Something has to change within the city or the government. We need to make sure that everybody can afford a house that they need to get into. And everywhere you look, the pricing is going higher and higher, and it's not coming down. And the interest rate, it's fluctuating. That's another thing. Both of those, when you put it together and you put somebody who's first-time house buyer, that you give it to this, then it's like it's like they cannot afford it, and it's heartbreaking that it tells them that they have to go to rental. And the rental, that's another case, a family who's 6 or 7 of them in a family that they cannot afford, they cannot live in 3-bedroom apartments. And these apartments that's being built, it's just a 3-bedroom, the highest. And I think in order to get affordable housing, we need to build more of townhomes that have 3 in a top and 2 in the basement. And then there is a living area in the middle. And we're not building of those. We just focused on single homes, and it's not helping. And something has to change, and that's why I want to make sure that everybody has a place that they can live comfortably in Rochester.
Thank you for your thoughts, Saida. This next question is about taxation and spending and the budget. If you've had a chance to review the City of Rochester budget, are there any areas or items that you would consider if you were a council member, either cutting or kind of reconsidering, and how much would you expect to save with those cuts?
I don't see anything that needs to be cut in. I think things that needs to be improving, which is park and recreation. That's where I would focus on, to make sure that there is a park and recreation for kids that can at least bond. You know, there's no place to bond in Rochester, especially the young men that's coming up. They don't have bonding place, basketball place, indoor, they don't have it. And the winter time, there's no place to go. It's just stay home. You gotta have a place for park and recreation family that they can afford. That's where I would focus. And I'm not sure where to cut taxes, but increasing it, I'm not for it. I'm against it. The other thing is that homelessness, we need to eliminate that also. Make sure that people have a place to call home, that they can at least see whether it's temporary or a place that they can stay permanently, that they can get a job with the help of the city. All of that needs to be focused on. Cutting taxes, I would say the small businesses like me, they need break. And so we're getting a lot of, every 2 weeks we pay more because, and for my job, we train people. Probably some of our drivers, some of them, they don't speak English. We try to make sure that they learn, and we don't get all of that as a credit. It should be. You know, if you train somebody from scratch that came to this country and you train them how to drive a person or read that schedule for that day. You know, that's sometimes it's time consuming. If the person, you repeat things to them and say, hey, this is what you're doing today. And then he comes back again and say, I don't know the schedule. Or they go to the wrong address. It's time consuming. But we train them.
Shaun, what are your thoughts around the city budget as it stands, and areas that you might think about cutting, reconsidering?
I've watched the budget for over 30 years, and you see it go up and down, and it's really, you're paying for the values that you see for your community. And so 1% of our tax levy is about $800,000. And so when somebody says to me, we want to cut, you know, we should cut taxes, I go, that's a great idea. It's $800,000 for 1%. You point to me where you think that we should be doing that. I'm a big proponent of our parks department. We've underfunded our parks for a long period of time. I'm proud that the citizens of Rochester 4 years ago approved a $2 million referendum, and we're starting to see that come to use here in Rochester, and I think that's a big help. When I first got on the council, we had a $1.2 million budget that we put into parks. There was an extra boost for parks, and we had to rebuild the parking lot because it had deteriorated so much. We redid the tennis courts out there at Kusky. We rebuilt the track. The track hadn't been maintained in 20 years, you know, and the parking lot hadn't been maintained for 20 years because we didn't have the money to do that. And when you knock on doors and listen to people, the parks touches everybody's lives. And people like to have that. The three things I always say for budget for Rochester, for any city, is number one is police and fire, public safety, and number two is roads, and number three is parks. Those are what we need to be doing. And I've never, if you talk to people coming to a community, the number one thing they're looking at is schools. I don't have any control in schools. Number two is public safety, and then parks. Taxes are about number 8 or 9 on that list. Most people don't look at that. But to be fair, we have to be prudent with our dollars. I think that we can change things. You look at our largest employer in town, that they changed how they do business. They don't have everybody downtown anymore. And that's a hardship for some of the businesses downtown. But from a business perspective, that's what we need to be looking more at Rochester. How do we do things differently? And our new city administrator's been there for 2 years, and she's done a good job of pointing that out. The council has looked at how do we do things differently. You know, that drives me nuts when somebody says we've always done it this way. And I'd like to look at different ideas.
Shaun, that's a good segue into the next question I have. You know, the city's growing.
Yep.
We live in a diverse and growing city. What would be your commitments around representing historically underrepresented communities in our city as a council member?
Well, I think that's a focus for our city council that we've done that. I was very fortunate. I worked part-time at the Dan Abram Healthy Living Center. I worked the nights and the weekends. And I taught swimming for 13 years. And when you get to see at 8 o'clock at night, 80% of the people there are from different cultures. And I don't think regular people in Rochester know that. And it's a welcoming, and you get to talk to them, and you get to see people from East Africa, and you get to see people from China and Taiwan, and get to talk to them. When you teach swimming and you have people from India who've never really been in a pool before, and you listen to what they have to say. As a city council member, my job is to listen. My job is to find people who may know something. We can't all be representative with what's there, but you can listen to people and reach out and say, hey, I have this issue coming up. What do you think about it? When we put the diversity person in our office, the city administrator's office, I asked a few people, and they thought it was a wonderful idea. You know, we have municipal IDs, and that's an issue that doesn't affect a lot of people, but if you listen to why we did that, it's a phenomenally good idea. And my job, again, was to communicate to people who are like, well, can they use it for voting? Can they use it for buying guns or alcohol? No, they can't. Well, how do you get that ID? And that's one of those areas that I'm very proud that we did. It's not going to help a lot of people, but the people it helps are going to make a difference.
Great, thank you, Shaun. Saida, what are your thoughts around what makes you best suited for the position of city council in relation, regarding the diverse and growing city, what would be your commitments around representing historically underrepresented communities in our city as a council member?
Rochester is growing fast. And one of the things that you noticed 12 years ago and today is totally different. And everywhere you look, you will see the difference. And I live in lower downtown. And the way they did their community and the people that they kind of stepped up, and they're the one that associated with themselves. I want to be part of that. And I want to represent lower downtown, all of Northeast, and I want to be part of the community and be there for them. And when they knock that door, I'm there, 24 hours, 7. So that's how I'm going to represent myself to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got the last question here, and we'll start with you, Shaun. What makes you best suited to be reelected for the position at City Council? And any final thoughts as we close?
I think my depth of knowledge. I know where Rochester's gone. I listen to people, and I truly do listen, and I like differences of opinions. If you disagree with me, I like to talk with you. The worst thing that happened to me is have somebody say, oh, geez, you did a great job, or geez, this is wonderful. And so I look at that. I have a personality that has me like change, and I do embrace change and try something new and something different. That helps me with my personality. Again, listening to people. We go all the way from John Marshall High School. We have a CC Heights. We go out to Century. We go all the way northeast to Rochester. So we have a wide range of people. We just picked up southeast Rochester by community college. And every one of those neighborhoods are unique, and they all have different needs and wants. But yet, I only represent the 5th Ward, but I'm on the City Council for Rochester. So I have to think of everything for Rochester. We have an airport. We have a sewer. We have a bus line. We have a library. Minneapolis and St. Paul don't have that. They're all handled by the Met Council. And so when you're on the City Council, you're given a lot of things. The International Airport, and what do you have to do on that? And so those add to our packets. We get 600-page packet. You read it on Wednesday, you look at it on Thursday, you send questions on Friday, and you want to be prepared for that Monday meeting so you can be the best representation that you can for your ward.
Thank you so much, Shaun. And Saida, what makes you best suited for the position on City Council, and any other closing thoughts?
Well, I'm a persistent, and I campaign for the future, and I want to make sure that Rochester knows about it, and I will be there for everyone, not just Ward 5, but anybody who walks through that door. I'm there. That's what I'm doing right now in our work, that I'm a CEO. So I want to be part of this community, and I want to make sure that I'm visible. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you, Saida and Shaun, for being here today. And thank you to our audience for joining us as we heard from Ward 5 City Council. Next week, we'll be joined by Ward 1 candidates, which will include incumbent Patrick Keene and challenger Andy Hemingway. Thank you so much for being with us today again. From 125 Live, we will see you next week on Our Town, the show about Rochester.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.